Hey everyone, my name is Brian Hilbert with Anglers Covey, and welcome back to Bug of the Month, where we're going to be talking about Sculpin. So what is a Sculpin? A Sculpin is basically a small bait fish that's very prevalent in a lot of our Rocky Mountain streams. They are small, in the 3 to 5 inch range is most average, can vary from a variety of colors between olive, tan. They can be kind of a dark rusty brown, and most commonly found in the Rockies is going to be the mottled sculpin. So as the name implies, they have a lot of barring and mottled colorations on them to help them blend in and camouflage from predators. They are not a very good swimmer, to put it lightly. They're actually quite clumsy in the water. They're one of the few fish that don't have an air bladder inside them to help them with balance. So they actually use their pectoral fins to kind of stabilize themselves and to balance themselves in the water. So unlike a normal fish that uses their air bladder to be able to kind of guide themselves in the water and keep them upright, they have to use their oversized pectoral fins, and a lot of times as they're swimming and trying to settle in the water, they'll stick them out to the side to be able to push them down. And we'll talk more about retrieve methods and one on how to swim the sculpin when we go over to the streamer tactics. So when it comes to fishing sculpin, a lot of people think instantly that means strictly streamer fishing. And actually, you can fish for sculpin using just about every method we use for fly fishing. One of my favorite ways to fish a sculpin imitation is to dead drift a sculpin just under a normal nymph rig on an indicator. So when it comes to fishing the sculpin, there's not necessarily a bad time of year to imitate sculpins. Sculpins are more of an opportunistic food source for the trout. The larger trout tend to be a little bit more predatory and might key in on an opportunity to eat a sculpin maybe a little bit more than some of the smaller fish. My personal opinion, I think fishing sculpins or streamer fishing is going to be best in the spring and then again in the fall. So those kind of coincide with spawning time. I think that trout are a little bit more territorial during those times, and also looking to add a high calorie meal during their spawning season, and might be a little bit more prone to eat a sculpin. So the first method that I'm going to talk about is streamer fishing with a sculpin. So pretty standard streamer rod setup is going to be a 9-foot 6 weight. You can certainly use a 5 or even a 4 if you're casting smaller flies. The beauty of having a heavier rod like a 6 weight is to be able to cast a little bit bigger and heavier fly. A lot of times we're casting an articulated fly that might have dumbbell eyes or lead eyes. That heavier rod weight's really going to help cast that rod, especially in windy conditions. So more important than the rod is actually the type of fly line that you use. Now, we could really get lost when it comes to discussing the different types of lines you can use for streamer fishing. Now, your regular floating line is going to work for being somewhere out here like the South Platte, like we are today. I actually like a sinking line. In this case, I have this paired with the Scientific Anglers Sonar Titan sink tip. This is a great line for casting either unweighted or lightly weighted streamers. That's just going to give it enough sink rate to get it down kind of mid-column, so when you're casting across in the current, it's not having your streamer just under the surface. It'll help kind of get that sculpin down to the bottom and be able to swing that across the current. Now when it comes to setting up for fishing a streamer, what I like to do is, coming right off of my fly line, I keep all of the butt sections from my tapered leaders during my guide season. When I'm fishing a lot of dry flies, I'll burn through these tapered leaders changing flies, and they get knotted up and whatnot. If you save these butt sections, these make a great butt section for your streamer rod. So I'll save these. In this case, this is about 3 feet, and I'm just going to come down to a micro swivel, and then from there I'm going to go with about 4 feet of fluorocarbon tippet. In this case, just some 0x Umpqua Deceiver X fluorocarbon, and I'm going to have that down with a loop knot onto my single hook streamer here. So pretty basic setup. That's going to be pretty universal for you, whether you're fishing, weight fishing, or fishing from a boat. So I want to talk about a couple of different techniques you can do while you're wade fishing and want to fish a streamer. So again, got my 6-weight rod here with the little near enough Sculpin, and there's a couple of different tactics we can do here. We can either do what's called down and across, where I'm going to cast quartering downstream and I'm going to swim the Sculpin kind of across current until it gets down below me, and then strip it back up to me and then cast again. And we'll be able to work across, almost creating this run here, fishing this kind of nice big deep pool right here with a little riffle at the bottom. There's a lot of boulders and different types of hiding spots where Sculpins like to live. We're going to just swim our Sculpin right on through there. The other tactic we can do is what's called casting upstream and swimming it back down to the fish. Now, personally, if I'm fishing from a boat, I'll have clients always cast upstream against the bank and swim it downstream as they make the retrieve. The reason for this is trout, which are an ambush style predator, when they're sitting in their boulders or in their hiding or ambush spots and they see that Sculpin coming down swimming at them, they need to make a decision on, am I going to attack or eat this thing or let it swim by? If you were to cast downstream and swim it across, what tends to happen is you get a lot of trout that want to chase the Sculpin out of curiosity, and you'll see it following your streamer all the way to the boat or all the way to the bank or even all the way almost to your feet as you're bringing it back, and then they decommit at the last minute. That gives them way more time to think about whether or not they want to eat that Sculpin, and tend to get a lot more follows without a commitment versus swimming down at them where they got to decide right away, and that instinct of attacking or ambushing kicks in where they just come and turn and eat it. So I want to take a moment to talk about fly lines when it comes to streamer fishing, when you're going to be imitating those Sculpins. So there are tons and tons and tons of options of different sizes, different sink rates, and a bunch of confusing numbers that get really kind of intimidating when it comes to shopping for fly line. My best advice is to come into the shop and grab anybody there and talk to them about the type of fishing that you want to be doing so they can help you pick out a line that best suits your needs. The two brands that I really like are going to be this Scientific Angler Sonar Titan sink tip line. This is probably the one I use the most anytime I be streamer fishing while I'm waiting. And then the Orvis Pro depth charge. This is a line that I use a lot from the drift boat as well as stillwater applications. This has a really good sink rate and casts very easy. It's going to turn over a lot of those little bit heavier flies, and anytime you need to cast into the wind, seems to do a really great job with that as well. So the Orvis depth charge and the Scientific Angler Titan sink tip, these are two great lines to start with, definitely to add to your fly fishing arsenal. So we're going to go ahead and start working this down and across presentation here. I'm just going to do an overhead cast all the way towards the bank. I'm going to let it hit the bank. I'm going to throw in a small mend, have my rod tip down and my line between my middle and index finger here. And I'm just going to do some erratic strips, maybe a long one with a couple of short ones, a long one, 2 or 3 short ones, and really let this thing kind of slowly swim through this pool all the way back up to me. My next cast, I'm going to cast just a little bit more downstream, throw my mend in, let it sink for a moment, and then begin my retrieve. Now when they eat this thing, you're definitely going to know. You're going to feel them pull on it pretty hard. What you're going to want to do anytime you get a streamer eat is what's called a strip set. A strip set, what I'm going to do is I have this line under my fingers. I'm going to do a long, sharp pull where I point the rod at the fish and I pull really hard backwards, okay? That's going to set the hook for me. What we don't want to do is try to set it like we're nymph fishing where we lift up in the air. You're going to drive that big hook home much more efficiently by doing a long strip like so. The next method I want to talk about is fishing sculpin with a nymph setup. So here I have an Orvis 9'5" weight Recon, and have that paired with the Orvis Hydros reel and an Orvis Hydros 5-weight floating line. This is definitely my go-to indicator rod and preferred line anytime I'm using an indicator. Now for my setup here, very similar to how I did the streamer, I'm going to save that butt section and have about 2.5–3 feet, where I'm just going to go to a little bit larger swivel. In this case, when I'm using an indicator rig, I like this oversized swivel. It prevents my tippet coming off of that from getting fouled around my indicator. And when we leave the indicator pegged right against the swivel, and I'll come off again with that fluorocarbon tippet, and I'll usually put a little tag in for an unweighted midge or whatever fly I happen to be fishing based on time of year. And then here at the bottom, I'm going to have my, this is a Sculpin nymph that I tie that kind of imitates, I call it the Sculpin nymph, but it's basically like a dead drift Sculpin tied with a slotted bead so it rides hook point up. Meant to imitate a Sculpin that's basically lost itself in the current and it just has its fins out and is waiting to settle. So that's kind of your basic nymph rig. You can dead drift this and twitch it. Definitely at the end of the drift, swing it and give it a couple twitches as you bring it back before you recast. Really universal rig and definitely very effective. So one of the things I like to do here at the end of my run is swing that Sculpin back down below me. Maybe give it a couple of little jigs. The Sculpin being at the bottom of my rig is going to just swim towards the bank and get a lot of fish to grab that on the swing like that. Right there on the swing. This little guy is feeling pretty ambitious there. You can grab that on the swing. Nice little, whew, nice little brown. There we go. Little brown, fell for that little Sculpin right there. So next we're going to talk about how to fish a jig streamer or a streamer on a Euro setup. So there's a couple things you can do. You can simply just dead drift this like we would any other type of European flies, where we're going to tight line nymph. I'm going to draw it in tight and we're just going to slowly drift that thing through the pool or through the water. My preferred way to fish a streamer on a European style is to do still that similar kind of down and across tactic, where I'm going to cast out straight to the side and I'm going to slowly draw this line in while jigging the fly through the run with my rod. Okay, I'm keeping the tip kind of low, bringing it here, oval cast up and over, letting it sink for a moment. I'm maintaining my tight line. I'm just going to jig and draw at the same time. There we go. Nice brown. Right. Fell for that jig streamer. Nice brown, pounced on it. You can see he really inhaled that thing. Got our barbless hook here to make it easy to remove, as deep as that is in there. There we go. Nice brown. So next I want to talk about how I store and carry my flies when I'm out wade fishing using streamers. So I'm a huge fan of these Umpqua bug lockers. Mine, as you can see, a little worn. I've had this thing for years, still holding up great. These still work, very durable, and you can divide all the compartments. You can see I don't carry a ton of streamers with me, maybe 2 or 3 of each pattern, a couple of different colors, and allows me to keep them all separated right here. My favorite thing about this is it's compact. It can fit in my pack, or what I do is just shove it right down the side of my waders. It's out of the way, I don't even know it's there. If I need to access it, real easy to grab it. Slender profile, really durable. This thing's gonna last you a long time. Huge fan of storing your streamers in this manner. Now I want to talk about my 3 favorite fly patterns when it comes to imitating the Sculpin. Fly number 1 is going to be the near enough Sculpin. This is a single hook streamer pattern, has dumbbell eyes on it, so it is weighted. The eyes are tied in a manner so it rides hook point up, so it's going to swim like this. If you look at the fly, it has a really broad head profile with a slender body and tail with that hackle feather back there. This is going to give a perfect imitation to the Sculpin profile. Has that kind of barring on there. This is a great kind of knockoff of a woolly bugger, but more intended to imitate a Sculpin. Really confident in this pattern, especially here on the South Platte. Our next fly is going to be Kelly Gallup's Zoo Cougar. This is probably my #1 Sculpin producer on my float trips. It is an unweighted fly, so you'll need to use a sinking line or a sink tip line to get it down. But the action that this thing delivers, there's just something special about it that trout can't resist. Has a big broad head. That deer hair collar here imitates those pectoral fins nicely. Marabou tail gives it a nice swimming motion, and then the lighter colored underbody matches that lighter belly that a Sculpin has. This is a great pattern, not too difficult to tie if you're new to working with deer hair. We're going to do a tying video for this one this month as well, but this is a really great Sculpin imitation. I carry it in olive, tan, and yellow. Really love this pattern. And then the last pattern we're going to talk about is Kelly Gallup's Dungeon. This is probably one of the more popular articulated flies out on the market. Also features that deer hair head, lots of marabou in this thing, some rubber legs. This articulation is going to give it a good swimming motion. I carry this in tan, olive, yellow, and black. Really love this pattern, especially when I'm doing float trips and having clients streamer fish from the boat. I would say this is my most confident articulated streamer fly that I carry in my box. So that's going to conclude our bug of the month for March, which is the Sculpin. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this video. Definitely encourage you to leave any questions or comments you have below. Also, you want to subscribe to that channel so you can check out our bug of the month for next month, which is going to be worms and annelids. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.